Hi Chris, how are you?
Good evening, Rod. I'm well. Here we are on the 28th of December, so in between Christmas and New Year, in that lull period, and you and I decided to record a podcast.
We are doing our podcast for our sins, and I think this will be our special year-end wrap-up thing. We didn't make much of the Christmas episode, came out on Christmas Eve, the last one, but we didn't have any shopping purchases advice for anybody or anything, so here we are.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I was away in Finland, so it's probably my fault. We recorded a bit early, and it's hard to give advice to people, and it's, people's context, budgets, use cases, etc., I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but we've done it before, so why stop now? But, I think just having a fairly normal episode, I was listening to other podcasts, and they did things like rate Christmas dinner from S tier to F tier, with an American co-host and a British one, Jason Snell and Mike Hurley. And Jason Snell mentioned something that I'd never heard in my life on that.
Go on.
It was like candied yams, so candied sweet potato, and I was like, okay, this is with a roast dinner, mind, or at least with Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner, where you take your sweet potatoes, yams, I think are the same thing, you do them as we would in this country, and then you cover them in marshmallow sauce.
I'm sorry, that's a firm no. I was shaking my head for the listeners. I'm not sure. I'm a bit weird on the whole sweet, savoury mixing up sometimes because I'm not sure it always works. When I was in Finland, we had a local Finnish cheese, a lot like halloumi, but with a caramel sauce. Apparently it's a thing. Jury's still out on whether should be a thing or not. The cheese was nice, the caramel sauce was nice, but the two combined, less nice in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I mean, let's not get into it because we might start rating Christmas dinner ourselves at this rate. But I was not keen on putting marshmallow sauce on vegetables.
No, it doesn't feel like cricket.
Well, it definitely wasn't cricket. Anyway, they rated it very badly, and I was glad that they did. So, should we crack on and do our little podcast instead?
Let's do it. Let's get into follow-up.
So we've only got a couple of stories, as talked about for reasons obvious. And the first one is we've been following this story a little closely about Google's payoff of Apple and Mozilla to feature Google as the default search engine when you first install Firefox, or when you open up Safari, you get Google as a search engine. Eddie Q has gone on record saying that Apple won't make a search engine. And more than that, if you read the deposition as linked to in the show notes, he says Apple won't make one, and even if they weren't paid to use Google, they would still feature Google as a search engine because they believe it's the best one.
They've got to say that, haven't they? They're just doing lip service. How much truth do you think comes out of an exec's mouth when they speak?
Well, they're taking the stand or making a declaration to a court. It should be true, but I agree with you, probably not so much.
They pay huge amounts of money to toe company line at all possible times. I'm amazed they would never make a search engine, though, because Apple famously like to, maximise your eyeballs on their stuff and revenue generate for as long as possible. Surely search engines is up there with things to keep you in their world even longer. But I think it'd be madness for them to do it right now. But 10 years ago, I think it could have been a very different story.
Yeah, I think Maps is the classic example of that, isn't it? They went off and they made their own map client because they didn't want to be beholden to Google. And look where that's left them. They are the second player in the mapping market. Sorry, OpenStreetMap. But, it is a feature that Apple are a very close second to Google. In most cases. Certainly, I think for some public transport planning, they're not quite as good as Google. But, they're certainly up there. And you've got to think that they made a half-decent search engine. But they'd be even more monopolistic now at this point, wouldn't they? I mean, some of our stories today are going to feature Apple in the EU. I can't think that would have gone down well.
No, it wouldn't have helped right now, would it? And that's what I mean. I can't see them going to do it now, but I think there could have been a time when they actively considered this. Or there was talk about them acquiring Bing, wasn't there, a few years ago?
Yeah. No, I think for as little as $1, Microsoft were going to give them Bing. Wasn't that what we talked about?
If only it was worth that much.
If only, well, you use DuckDuckGo. That's based on it, right?
I love DuckDuckGo. Leave DuckDuckGo alone.
Leave DuckDuckGo alone. Something that isn't being left alone are the EU and their continued working with Apple to try and extract some sort of... It's not remuneration they're after. It may end up being remuneration, but they want it to provide a more equal platform. I just thought this was a really interesting article on their website. Article's the wrong word, but document on their website, which is a consultation document on proposed measures for interoperability. And this is the union, the EU, actually going out to developers, broadcasters, developers who may be limited by what Apple allows them to do on the platform, and actually seeking commentary on how they've found the transition to being compliant with the DMA thus far. I think this is a really interesting and open way of moving forward by the EU.
Yeah, it's interesting how they're playing it, and they are going to be holding Apple to their word, aren't they? They're carrying on with the process. Yeah, it's interesting. I do like they're going to be forcing Apple to do this interoperability piece.
And again, I think maybe our feature for this year is, why aren't Apple doing something about it? It just feels like they're standing in front of the oncoming lorry, like that scene in Austin Powers with the golf cart gradually moving towards them, going, stop! Because it's just...
slow motion.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I mean, I'm not going to read through the document, but I think it's fascinating they're taking this kind of consultation. We've spoken a couple of times before about their meeting with Riley Testalt. I got to think lots of developers are going to have opinions on this.
100%. I mean, we've all got opinions on it, haven't we? And what Apple aren't doing. And you've only got to think, I think the theme of the year has been, if only Apple policed themselves, they could have done this in their way, and then they wouldn't be forced to do it to the letter of the law, which is now what they're doing.
Yeah, and this is fairly comprehensive, talking about notifications, running in the background, automatic switching for audio, so how they prefer their own headphones for audio switching and things like that, high bandwidth peer-to-peer connections, which we could talk about in terms of AirDrop, or you could talk about in terms of screen sharing. When you think about the detail that they go into here, it is very limiting for other developers, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I've got my Sony headphones on. They don't have all the functionality of my AirPods because that's walled off to Apple. I think it's getting better, but it's not there yet, is it?
It's not there yet, and it should be a more level playing field. I understand it's in Apple's corporate interest, but it's not fair.
Agreed, and now they're being picked up on it, and they're paying the price, aren't they?
And rightly so. And as we've seen already, and the theme of this year's, it feels like the dominoes are beginning to fall. I think changes in the United States may affect this, certainly on that side of the pond, but I don't think that's going to make any difference in Europe.
I don't think it's making any difference in Europe. I wonder if it will delay in America for the next 4 years, and then there'll be a change of mind at some point.
Yep, that's it for news. Should we for follow-up? Should we do a little news?
Yeah, a little bit of news.
Only one story I thought was particularly interesting this week, and this is how in America, Hertz, who hire EVs, specifically Teslas in America, I hired one myself in 2022 in California, so I know for a fact that Hertz hire EVs. Anyway, if you're renting one, Hertz have apparently just got in touch with you and said, hey, do you want to buy it really, really cheap? Possibly for as low as $17,000.
Wow. I mean, I guess, though, they just need to, if they're offloading their fleet, better to get some cash in the door than zero, and it just sit there depreciating. So it's quite a write-down they must be taking.
I think, big hire companies, and particularly Hertz in America, if you think of the amount of vehicles they must buy to cover, 500 million people, plus tourists, that's an awful lot of vehicles. I presume they move stock around all the time. Chevy Bolts are going for $18,000, 2023 Tesla Model 3 for a bit less. It's a hell of a deal. If you're actually in the market to pick up a used Tesla, I think you're going to struggle to find anything better than that.
As much as I am not a Tesla fan, that is a lot of car for a reasonable amount of money.
Yeah, you'd take that, I think. You'd take the hit of being potentially a MAGA hat as you drive around, I think. But it is interesting, and it speaks somewhat to the value of used EVs.
Well, I guess you've got used EVs, but then you've got rental used EVs, which is probably lower again. Used EVs plummet, but used rental EVs must plummet twice as much. I don't know what the number would be.
Yeah, and I think Hertz particularly had a bit of a scandal where customers were returning their EVs, which you didn't need to return full in the same way you did a gas car, sorry, American fans, and charging them for petrol, which was a bit wrong and a bit naughty.
That is a bit naughty.
It is a bit naughty. And that's it. That's all I've got for stories, but I think it's nice we feature EV stories from time to time.
Yeah, I'm a big EV fan, as much as I'm a big petrol fan.
There we go. Should we do some media?
Let's do the media.
This next story is going to be quite difficult. A, if you haven't seen it, and B, there may be spoilers. I
think that's fair.
Did you watch the Gavin and Stacey Christmas special?
We did. My wife and I said to our children, if you want to go to bed before it starts, or you can go after it starts, but don't interrupt us in the middle, because we'd like to just sit down and enjoy it for an hour and a half, please.
I thought it was excellent.
I did actually just bump into somebody about an hour ago who said it did not live up to any of their expectations, which I was a bit disappointed with. But then he said in his head he'd overbaked how good it was going to be, and I think that is a problem. You know, it's like when you're waiting for the episode 1 of Star Wars to come out. You know, it was the same. So I think they did a good job. I think they landed it in a really good way, because it could have ended so much not worse. They may not have landed the story in the end, I guess, and brought it home. And I think they did a good job with it. I enjoyed it. It was a good hour and a half. I think it could have been a little bit tighter in a couple of places, but on the whole, I think they did a really good job, and I'm glad they kept all the cast that are still alive. So it was really good.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it was more satisfying in many ways than the 2019 one, which obviously ended on a cliffhanger. They've said this is the last one they're going to film. I think they did the cast justice. They got so many really quite famous actors back to play very small parts, I think, in this. And I found it quite satisfying. The humour landed. They featured Barry very, very well. I think they did all the characters justice. It was a satisfying conclusion.
Completely agree. Yeah, I would definitely watch it again. I do want to actually rewatch it in case I missed a few bits. But no, I think they did a really good job. Great Christmas Day here. I think the BBC owned Christmas this year, to be fair to them.
Yeah, I think they... Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to go on, we may as well talk about it now. But they also had Wallace and Gromit on. I think it was on Christmas Day. Vengeance Most Foul, which is just terrific. For those who aren't Wallace and Gromit fans, I don't understand how you can't be a Wallace and Gromit fan.
Do you know, the one thing I noticed with Wallace and Gromit especially is how it transcended 3 generations in my family of people that wanted to watch it. My children, myself and my wife, and my parents wanted to watch it. Whereas generally, you don't usually get a TV show that engages so many different age groups. So I think the BBC nailed it. They had Wallace and Gromit with Gavin and Stacey in the evening. What a lineup. Perfect. Yeah,
I would agree with that. It was a really good lineup. And there was a documentary on a couple of days before the Wallace and Gromit one about sort of the creation of Aardman Studios and how they started out with Morph. Actually, tell a lie. They started out with a character called Aardman that was kind of a rubbish Superman, hence the name Aardman Studios. And then they did Morph, and then they did the Creature Comforts adverts, and then Nick Park, who was a film student who had seen what they'd done with Morph, wanted to create his own sort of thing going forward, and they brought him on with Wallace and Gromit as his creation, and the rest is history, really. And they went on to win, I think, 3 Oscars at this point. It was just a really interesting look inside of Wallace and Gromit and the studio behind it, and Pirates and Adventure with Scientists and all the other animated things that have come before, and sitting in the commentators, pundits position were people like Brad Bird from Pixar, John Lasseter, Matt Groening from The Simpsons, all saying how this is the animation they wished they could make.
Wow, that's quite a thing, isn't it?
It was really impressive. I thoroughly enjoyed watching it, and I think it made watching the actual Murder Most Foul, which was also a satisfying conclusion to a story, actually, even better.
That's fair. Yeah. They both landed in really good ways, I thought. So, I think Christmas Day was a hit. I don't normally watch a lot of TV. It was fantastic.
It was indeed fantastic. Do you have any Christmas traditions when it comes to watching things yet, or are your kids still too young?
Not overly. Do you know what, one thing the kids quite like is that we just put the telly on BBC, I think, and just let it roll, see what happens. Whereas we don't often just put on a TV channel, because obviously everything's streamed and you usually go and proactively pick what you want to watch. So I think they quite enjoy that. And we watched a couple of the kids' TV shows like The Little Gruffalo and things were on. So I think they enjoy that. That's probably the one thing that they do. They just like being at home with the TV on, the fire lit, and just relaxing with mum and dad.
That is quite nice. We do have a bit of a Christmas tradition, or at least the kids and I have a Christmas tradition, which is we watch some TV episodes, Christmas sort of themed things. And there's 2 we absolutely always watch with it. There's normally 3, but we didn't get into it this year. So the first one we watch is from the TV show Community. I don't know if you watch Community. It's an American TV show, 6 seasons in a movie, which is very meta. It's written by Dan Harmon, the guy who went on to be the co-creator of Rick and Morty. Quite a challenging character, I think. But Community is just expert commentary on the state of media and American popular culture as much as anything else. It stars, the most famous star is Chevy Chase, who was obviously a big star in the 80s, alumni of Saturday Night Live, as a sort of, without beating around the bush, sort of elderly racist sort of character. And that is played very, very well by the rest of the cast. Anyway, there is an episode called Comparative Religion. Link is in the show notes to the IMDb, the Rotten Tomatoes article. which is terrific. It talks about the holidays and what it's like to be at university and with all that going on with the friends that you make at time. Notable within the episode is it stars Anthony Michael Hall as a bully. And if you ever watched The Breakfast Club or Weird Science or any of those sort of John Hughes films growing up, Anthony Michael Hall always played the nerdy character. And it's fascinating to see him now into his 40s at this point, playing a bully on a TV show, but it's very, very funny. Also features Florence and the Machine's Kiss with a Fist, which I think is the first time I'd come across that in any media as well. If you haven't watched Community, you should, and if you only watch one episode of Community, make it this one.
I guess I better get on with that then.
That's another thing. I know how much you like watching TV. I should probably crack on, because otherwise we're never going to get through this. The second thing that we tend to watch is Friday Night Dinner. Surely you've watched Friday Night Dinner.
I've seen a few of season 1. I've never seen it all the way through.
Well, we watched the Friday Night Dinner Christmas episode, which is notable because the family in Friday Night Dinner are Jewish. They would normally celebrate Hanukkah, but in this episode they actually celebrate Christmas because the mother quite enjoys it. They have grandma and horrible grandma around, and hijinks ensue, and I think it's absolutely worth a watch. It will make you laugh.
I seem to have more homework, and we're only just into the show.
More and more homework. Well, it's up to you if you watch it or not, but I'd say it's up to you to develop your own family traditions. I was just talking about Christmas watching. Now, we would normally watch the Father Ted Christmas special as well, but we ran out of time this year and only squoze in one of the Friends ones, and that in itself was quite funny. So that was our sort of gather round as most of a family and watch the Christmas episodes of those TV shows.
Yeah, I can see it's something me and the kids will do, like probably like with you and your kids as they get bit older. They often just like to watch things like The Grinch or The Snowman and Father Christmas and things.
Yeah. The last one that I would normally watch with the kids, but they were out working or partying because they are over the age of 18, was I watched Die Hard when it was on Channel 4 on Christmas Eve, I think it was. And what a great film that is.
I love Die Hard. I watched it too. I did actually watch it with my 11-year-old son, and he actually quite enjoyed it. I think it's the first time he's seen a proper 80s action movie, so it was good.
The film that made the action genre reborn, really. Bruce Willis cast as a third choice after Schwarzenegger and Stallone. Wiley was still filming Moonlighting, so that's why you got that sort of very tired, gritty performance for him, because he'd done a day's filming of something else. A little bit dad bod, a little bit everyman, and obviously Alan Rickman knocking it out the park.
And it absolutely worked. I can't imagine Arnold or Sylvester being in that role. Bruce owned that role. It's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, and of course, both of them get referenced within it. And John McTiernan, the director, had just finished filming Predator with Arnie, so Arnie very much in his mind.
Okay, interesting. I didn't realise that.
Yeah, there you go. A bit of useless facts for you. Did you watch any other movies during Christmas?
The only one I think I've already mentioned in the show is that Christmas, which is on Netflix. My son has watched it 3 or 4 times by now. So, yeah, we've seen that one enough, I think.
Fair enough. I will just reference, and I'll let you put it in the show notes, the Cinema Wins episode about Die Hard, where he goes through the film and sort of gives everyone that scores a point. You can see he's got a win counter for those watching the video of what goes on, and I won't play too much of it because otherwise we'll get another media strike against us. But just to go through the making of it, to pick up some shots about it, the foreshadowing, the casting in it, everything. It's about 20 minutes long, the Cinema Wins thing. It's absolutely worth a watch.
Okay, I'll get it in the show notes.
Get it in the show notes and give it a watch. Nothing else in media, Chris?
No, nothing else for me. Thank you.
Okay, we will skip over games, because even though I have played some, we're going to go straight onto the main show, which I think may cause a bit of discussion. So, okay. Our main show this week is going to go, as we did last year, and go through a number of categories. I'm just going to change that back to that. Go through a number of categories. We're going to have Mac App of the Year, Apple Product of the Year, iOS App of the Year, tvOS App of the Year, iPadOS App of the Year, TV Show of the Year, Movie of the Year, Game of the Year, Biggest Screw Up, and Most Absent. Does that sound like a good list of things to go through?
Yep, I think it sounds fair. There's no Vision OS App of the Year, though.
I wonder why that is.
And WatchOS App of the Year?
I don't think there's anything notable in WatchOS, is there, really? I'm sorry there's no WatchOS App of the Year, but frankly, I don't use apps on my watch other than the workout, all the things that are built into it. So there we go. Should we fire on and do Mac App of the Year?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so the way we'll do all of these categories is we've mostly got 4 potential winners in every category. We'll do a winner and we'll do a runner-up. First, in the Mac App of the Year category is iPhone screen sharing. which I think we've both used.
This is the one app on the list that I have used. I'm not a big Mac user, as we've discussed in the past. I'm a big iPad user. This app is fantastic. I want this app on my iPad, please. I think it's so good. You can be using your Mac and your phone's just on the side in your pocket, and you can load up all the apps from it. You can get the notifications from it. I think it's really well done. I think they've done a great job. And in hindsight, it feels like it should have been there years ago. So hat off to Apple on this one. What do you think?
I think it's a good app. It's fairly solid. It feels like it's missing some features. I agree with you. Why did it take so long to come out? Almost, it's like a begrudging. There you go. You can have that then if you all really want it.
I reckon this is super helpful for the guys and girls in Apple, though, when they're testing stuff. Surely this has got to be great for them. So, no, I think this is fantastic. And yeah, I love it. And I'd like to see more of it. And I'd love it to come to my iPad.
Fair enough. Second app, Zen Browser. So I've talked about Zen Browser on this podcast before. I was trying to use Zen Browser before we started the podcast because I've moved away from Safari again, but it won't let me drag my tabs from one to the other the way I've got it set up at the moment, which isn't perfect for the podcast. So for the moment, we're sticking with Safari. But Zen Browser, based on Firefox, a spin on Firefox. It's very nice. It's got tabs on the left-hand side, which suits my usage. It has some interesting sort of theming and preferencing option. All your Firefox plugins work. It's a very solid browser, and I think we should all be using things that aren't Safari or Google Chrome, frankly.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that statement. I've not used Zen Browser. I'm happy to give it a go, though.
On your Mac, I think you should.
Did they not do it on my iOS devices?
Almost certainly not.
Womp.
This is Mac App of the Year, though, so we're not talking about iOS devices.
No, but it's obviously sometimes some things are multi-platform.
Many things are multi-platform, and actually that's going to be a theme of this when we get to the iOS apps, is how many of them are now actually Android apps as well. Third app to be featured, Grab2Text, also an app of the week by me. This is a little thing that terminates, that sits in your menu bar up near your clock. You can click on it anytime and you can grab any text from your screen, from a movie, from a PDF. It will destroy the formatting from the PDF or enable the formatting from the PDF. Quite often if you're trying to copy on the Mac, I don't know what it's like on the iPad, I never do it, paragraphs that span across 2 pages, it will get that weird sort of text insertion point and out points. Grab2Text actually preserves things the way they're meant to be, so when you paste it, it stays together. So it's just a really nice free little app that lives in your Mac's menu bar that lets you grab text and then paste it in plain text or formatted into whatever format you want.
Yeah, it looks like a good utility. I'm sure if I use my Mac for productivity, I would probably like the look of this.
Yeah, it's a really solid app. And then last one in the Mac App of the Year category is Mackie, which again is an open source app. It's a Mac clipboard app, something you absolutely wish you had on the iPad. This is another thing that sits up in your menu bar and it keeps a rolling clipboard. I think back to 50 items as default. It's searchable. It will preserve text or not. You can keep images in there. It's got nice keyboard shortcuts to get in there and bring everything up again. It's just a terrific, fast, gets out of the way app that does everything you want it to in terms of a clipboard manager. So a really nice little app.
Yeah, I'd like the look of this. Quite a cool icon as well.
Cool icon, cool app. So I guess not really having an opinion on most of these Mac apps. This is mostly down to me, this category.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would give a thumbs up to the iPhone screen sharing app. It's rare for Apple to bring a new Mac app. And I think they've done a really good job. It's just so well done.
While I agree with you that it is very well done, I don't think Apple should get an award from us, so to speak, a virtual award for something that should have been built into the operating system a couple of years ago and is disappointing for the fact that it's still not built into the iPad, frankly.
Fair.
So my instinct is that we give Mackie, the clipboard app of the year, and we'll give a runner-up to iPhone screen sharing.
All right, done.
Done? I'm sure we can come up with similar compromise as we go on.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
Shall we move on and do Apple Product of the Year?
Yeah, it's an interesting list we got here.
It is an interesting list. So let's go through the list and we'll talk them one by one. So we've got the iPhone 16, the iPhone 16 Pro, the Mac Mini, and the iPad Pro. We'll start with the iPhone 16. What a great phone. Yeah,
it's a great phone. My wife's got this phone. I've used it a little bit. I'm not very au fait with camera control. I think I need to experience it and use it on my daily phone to get comfortable with it. But what a phone, what a great phone. It's a very strong phone for their main phone, and it's got a lot of functionality that you would normally buy the Pro phone for.
Yeah, I think it's really solid. I think they've got good colours, good camera, new features that should have been on there. It still lacks, I think, the always on screen, if I'm right in saying that.
No always on, no promotion.
Yeah, but other than that, I think it's a very, very complete phone. The most compelling that they've released in the standard phone for years.
I would agree with that. I think it's really good. Like I said, really good phone. My wife's very comfortable with it. Very happy. And I do like the colours.
I think that, bring those to the Pro phone, please. Good phone. And I think, it's really the standard bearer for what an iPhone can be.
I do feel for my wife, though. She wanted the pink one, but because it will get handed down to children, she chose just the black one. Because
that is really taking one for the team. I think you should have got her the phone colour she wanted.
She was on board with it because she knows it will end up with somebody else in the family a year down the line or 2 years down the line.
They go in cases, don't they?
Well, that's the thing. My wife's one's in a case, so even if she had the pink one, you wouldn't really know it. Maybe I need to buy one of those D-brand things just to put over the camera Mesa.
Yeah, I think that probably would have worked. So, staying with iPhones, with the 16 Pro next, just an evolution of the 15 Pro and Pro Max, really. Slightly better cameras, very slightly better screens, very slightly smaller than they were last year. Sorry, tell a lie. Very slightly bigger than they were last year, while maintaining more or less the same form factor. You're getting more screen real estate. Not a lot to be said about the Pro phones, really. If you liked last year's, you'll like this year's. I don't personally think as much of a leap forward as the iPhone 16 standard was, though.
I would agree. There wasn't enough in here for either of us to upgrade. I was concerned it was going to be a bit bigger, but actually the reality is the screen is bigger, but you wouldn't really know it unless you obviously went up to the bigger size phone. So I think they're great phones, and they're probably worth the upgrade if you had one 2 or 3 years old, but not worth the upgrade year on year.
Yeah, I think that is fair comment. Next, the Mac Mini, which I think we've both bought, even if we don't both have at this point.
Yeah, mine is acquired, and I've got another 20-something days till I get it, hopefully, which is frustrating. But I'm looking forward to it. I think this is a great device, and it seems to have struck a chord with a lot of people. It seems very popular.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most positively received Apple products in years, frankly. It's only if you go ridiculous on the hard drive storage and the memory that you actually start spending a lot of money. The base model for £599/dollars is an awful lot of computer for the money. And as long as that's all you need it for, bit of like web surfing, video editing, stuff like that, I think it will stand you in very good stead. This, combined with the jump to 16 gigs of RAM, has made the Mac a much better platform and more reachable for more people. Yeah,
completely agree. And it's great to see Apple maintain that price point with the very latest, rather than keeping last year's model around for a bit longer to service the lower end. I think this looks great. It feels like they've made a lot of great design decisions, a lot of good performance in it. I've got one, like I say, coming, and I can't wait for it. I'm actually really looking forward to it, and I'm comfortable waiting. It would do me good to wait, because we do live in a world where we get nearly everything the next day, so to have to wait 30 odd days for it to turn up, I'm okay with it.
So I've got one. I love it. It just sits away under my desk, not whirring away because I never hear it. I've got a variety of things plugged into it. It just takes almost everything thrown at it. I think there's some software peculiarities in Sequoia that cause it a problem. I don't think it's the hardware of the device. Looking at YouTubers, it seems to be one of the most upgradable Macs we've had in years. If you're actually willing to get into it and take things out of it, you can actually get at things like the Thunderbolt ports and potentially swap them in and out. Why anyone would ever do that is beyond me, particularly if you've only bought the base one for $599. It's a very capable device. I've edited videos on it. I record this podcast with it. I run a couple of VMs with it. I have played a couple of Windows games via Crossover Office with it. I think it's a great device.
Yeah, and I think it will play Civilization 7 when it comes out. So, just keep that in mind.
Brief aside, Civilization 7 Founders Edition pre-order is available on the PlayStation 5. It's £120.
I'm not sure I want to play Civ with a controller. I think I'm going to get it on Steam or something. So it feels like a mouse and keyboard game to me.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair enough. Our last Apple product category, the iPad Pro, which I'm going to let you tell us about.
What a device. So this was the first device to come with the M4 in it. People, when it was rumoured it might have an M4 in it, a lot of commentators said no, they haven't. The M4's not out yet. They haven't put it in any Macs, but it did come with the M4. It's also got tandem OLED, so dual OLED screen on it. It maintains the two screen sizes of 11 and circa 13 inches. It's incredibly thin. It's a great device. It's not wildly different to any of the iPads that have gone before it, but it is a fantastic piece of equipment. And when you watch a film on it, you can really appreciate the screen. Sometimes when I watch a film, I kind of wish I had the bigger one, but I bought the smaller one. It's so portable. It's got cellular in it. Imagine a laptop where you could have cellular connectivity in it. It's got the new Apple Pencil Pro attached to it if you opt for that option. It's incredibly expensive, if I'm honest, but what a great device. And I think if you want this device, if this is the device for you. For me it was, and I really enjoy using it. But it's a lot of money. I mean, you can get to $2,000 without breaking a heartbeat, which is a lot for an iPad. But it's a device I use every day of the week, so I would recommend it. I think it's great. Do I think it's device of the year or product of the year, though, is a question.
Yeah, as Chris has been talking, I've been ticking all the options on the iPad Pro, and I'm at £2,600.
Yeah, easy. I could quite believe it. I mean, the screen is amazing. If you want to consume movies but on the go with the best possible screen, that is it. But could you justify it for editing your Word documents and sending emails? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, and you had an M1 iPad, is it that much better than an M1 iPad?
It's a tricky comparison for me because I changed the size. I've gone down to the smaller size, so a lot more portable, a lot more likely just to pop it in my bag. I even bought just a folio cover without the keyboard on it for those reasons. I think the M1 iPad was a great buy because here I am 3 years later and it's still fine to use. My son's using it all the time. I think if anybody's on an M iPad, there's no need to rush to upgrade. You'll know if you want this device. It is fantastic, but it's got a lot of bleeding edge tech in it with the screens, I think, that push the price up a little bit uncomfortably. Right, well, there are 4 options. Do you have any strong contenders for what our winner is going to be? I would vote for, I think, the Mac Mini, because I think it's the most acceptable product for most people. If somebody's thinking about getting into the Mac but not sure, this is a great device to get you in the door, especially if you've got keyboard, mouse, screen, or if you've got a child that wants to do some coding or have a device like this. I think it's a fantastic device. A lot of performance, M4 chip. What do you think? I 100% agree with you. I think the Mac Mini is the standout in this category this year for me. That I think you can get into the Apple ecosystem. You may never get out of it again, but you can get into the Apple ecosystem for not a lot of money. It's going to do everything you ever want with it if you're not a demanding user. And actually, even if you are a slightly demanding user, you can do an awful lot with them. You don't need to throw many upgrades into it. I think it's a great computer. Chances are you're going to have something USB-C lying around. You can plug into it for keyboard and mouse and screen, and you're off to the races. So for me, I think it's a strong winner this year. And I would be tempted to say, based on what you said about the iPad Pro, that our runner-up is the iPhone 16. Yeah, I think that's fair. I would agree with that. I think it's not worth the extra money this year for the Pro or the Pro Max phones. It's a fantastic device with a fabulous chip in it, a great screen. It's got the dynamic island, it's got the camera control buttons, it's got the shortcut key, it's got everything that you really want in the phone in a beautiful package with a lovely colour on it. So I think it's hard to argue with that. I completely agree with you, and they're both not ridiculously expensive. They're not cheap, but they're not as expensive as the Pro device that we just discussed. Look at us with actually valid consumer advice. Just don't buy the most expensive thing. Agreed. iOS App of the Year. So again, we have 4 entries in this space. We have Reader, Reeder, a news reading app. We have Monzo, a banking app. Callsheet, Casey Liss's IMDb front end, effectively, and Carrot Weather. Just as an aside, these apps didn't need to come out in 2024. They just need to be actively supported in 2024. So it's not like they have to be brand new apps this year. Although Reader, at least Reader 5, is a brand new app this year. It's a complete rewrite, isn't it? So, thoughts on Reader? I love it. That's it. I think it's a really good app. I don't think I even bought it. I downloaded it immediately. I probably should sign up to it, even though I don't think I need any of the pro features. But it's a fantastic app. I use it every day. I've just got a bunch of websites in it. I scroll through the list of articles. I tap on some I read within the app, some I link out to the website. I don't have to mark anything as read. It just does it as I scroll. For me, this is a brilliant app. I must confess, I don't use any of the social media bits. I know you can link it to social media feeds, but it's just a really nice app, and I really quite like the look and feel, and I think it looks good on all devices. So I use and bought the in-app purchase for Reader, the 1-year Pro subscription to it, because I had a lot of feeds. I think that's one of the limitations of the standard version. You can only have
I think the Pro version has a limit of 10 feeds, be they JSON or XML or whatever, and there's a few other bits and pieces as well. I also don't use any of the social media features of this. It's a good solid app. You get a nice sync between your iPad and your Mac and your phone. It's very prescriptive in the way that it works. As you said when you were talking about it, it doesn't give you an unread count. I don't like that. I wish it did have an unread count, so I knew how many. If I've got 50 stories to read, I know how long roughly that's going to take me. If there's 50 stories in this, I have no clue how long I'm going to be scrolling for. So I actually see that as a limitation, not a benefit.
Yeah, but you don't have to read it all in one hit. You can just scroll 5, 10, and then you're good.
I disagree. That's when I open my news reading app, I want to know how long I'm going to be there for because I can calculate what I'm going to do next.
No, I like it. I quite like not having the count, if I'm honest.
It's a pretty app. It's well done. Like I say, it definitely has opinions about the way it wants you to use it. But I like the seamless experience. I will have other negative comment about it. It at one point decided I didn't have a Pro subscription and wouldn't let me reactivate it. And that's probably not Reader's fault. That's probably iCloud's fault because all these things are in the background. But that really irritated me.
Yeah, I can understand that being annoying. The thing I like about it is, I'm trying to work out how to phrase it, but it doesn't look like every other app. You know, it's got a little bit about it. I don't know if it's the font or some of the grey, but and there's a shadow in it. And it's just quite nice to see something that's designed a little differently rather than just being a flat app. And I think they've done a really good job of it. Yep,
I think that's fair. Monzo, a banking app within the United Kingdom. Lots of people have Monzo these days. You'll quite often see sort of the coloured cards in people's wallets. But as an app on the iPhone, and I have used it on Android as well, it's just exactly what you want from a banking app. It puts your money front and centre, talks about where transfers are. It makes it seamless to be able to send people money. It will automatically insert into text messages your account number and your sort code and all that kind of stuff, or it will give them a one-click link to pay into, or if they're also Monzo customers, when the phones get close to each other, it will let you send them directly from one to the other when they're in the same Wi-Fi network. It's just a very well-made app that they keep up to date, where you can choose, and feels like an iOS experience. You can change the icon colors as you can with other apps and things. For a banking app, I don't know who your bank is, and I won't ask, but my bank is a very old-fashioned British bank with the word Scotland in the name. It's not a great experience, I got to say. It's very locked down. It's very pared back, and you feel like it's the web view surfaced in another way. Monzo's not like that. It feels like an app designed for the smartphone generation, and I appreciate that they've made that effort.
No, I think that's fair. I'm with Nationwide. I'm happy to share the app felt like a web view. But for some reason, the last 6 months, it feels like they've looked at apps like Monzo and probably various other challenger banks and gone, oh, look, don't need to do everything in a web view. We can make it native, make it more real experience for people on phones. Because you've got to assume that the majority of their users are going to be app phone-based users. So I think some banks hopefully are investing in that. I'm happy to support some of this. I think it's good that Monzo and et al. Are hopefully forcing the institutional banks to change some of their practices.
Yeah, solid app, but as you say, if they've been the sort of creative spark in the market that's improved banking, certainly in the UK at least, more power to them.
100%.
Moving on, we have Casey Liss's app Call Sheet. Do you use Call Sheet?
I don't use it a huge amount. I'm a big Wikipedia fan. I don't know why. I go to Wikipedia for everything, and I know it's edited and it's not always true, but I just really like Wikipedia, and I can't explain why I like looking at stuff on Wikipedia. It's just in my muscle memory.
So Wikipedia is one thing, but it doesn't always get down into the weeds like the IMDb app does about this is the producer, and it can take you on a journey about what other things those people have been in. For example, in Call Sheet, I learned that Will Smith has something to do with Slow Horses, which I didn't know before. So Will Smith, the actor, I think he's a producer on Slow Horses. So it's thanks to Call Sheet, and it probably does say that on the Wikipedia page, but I use Call Sheet as a front end to IMDb because IMDb is nasty. I think that Casey has done a great job on this, on presenting information that's interesting. You can do things on there like click on and off toggles to whether you want spoilers or episode counts or episode titles, which may also contain spoilers within there. Ages of actors, he's very responsive in there, and I hope he's making a decent living out of it, although I'm sure he's doing fine with ATP as well. But it's just a very complete iOS app that he's obviously spent a lot of time sweating bullets over to get it to work as well as it does, and I just think it's very well made.
No, I think that's fair. I think it is a good app. Yeah, I can't explain why Wikipedia is my place of choice, but for 90% of what I'm looking for, I'm a Wikipedia person. I think he's done a good job, and keeps adding features, which is what you want.
Last app, Carrot Weather. Do you use any weather apps on your phone?
Just Apple Weather.
I'm aghast, Chris. Aghast.
The corporate overlord has me.
It really does. So, as part of I want to support other developers. I don't think you should just always take the defaults. It's always worth it. As with browsers, you should always go out and check out what's around there. Carrot Weather is a weather app with personality, and you can give it more or less personality, i.e. it can be super sweary, or not, or points in between, really. And it tries to be topical. It'll pull things in about the news and hurricanes, and it pretends that it hates you. Actually, it hates all humans. The background of the app is that it's always working against you. I created this bad weather just for you, that kind of thing. You always get a new thing when you go in. If you want to, you can record. You can use your Apple-generated voice, which is a feature that came out in iOS last year, to actually read the weather to you in your own voice if you wanted to do so, if you were vain enough to do so. It's just a very well done app. If you pay for it, there's a free version which gives you most of the features that you'd want. Time now, forecast for the next 5 days, weather maps, all that kind of stuff. The pro version gives you a lot more in terms of customizable icons. You can change the layout of the screen. You can change your weather provider from the Met Office to Apple Weather to Aquara to others. It's a very flexible app. It's got a great widget. It's got good Apple Watch support as well. It's just a very well-made app. And in order to support the developer, I'm quite happy to give them, not a lot of money per year. I've only learned today, as I was putting the list together, that it's actually available on Android as well. So fair play to them for bringing something with personality to the other platform.
Yeah, I probably do need to review some of my app choices in life, because I think I am too linked to Apple's ecosystem and Apple's main apps. And so I think I should start looking away.
Fair enough. So there are 4 apps. Have you got any feelings for which one you'd like to win?
I'm a big fan of Reader, and it's going to be coming up later. Ones I can't comment on, not used it, but like I say, if they're the one that have changed the world of banking, then I would support that. Coolsheet I do think is a very good app, very comfortable with that. And Carrot Weather I've used in the past, and it is great to see an app that just keeps iterating year on year with all the latest iOS features. So I think you've got 4 very, very suitable contenders, but what's your preference?
I wanted to put Tapestry into this, which is the Icon Factory's new app that's in Kickstarter at the moment, in place, alongside Reader, and I can't because it's in beta, and I don't think it's fair to put a beta app in to a category like this, as it's not available to the general public. We're going to talk about Reader later, so my instinct is I would quite like Callsheet to have the win, just because I think Casey's done a cracking job with it, and I think Carrot Weather should get runner-up.
Let's do it.
That was very non-contentious. I thought we were going to have more of a fight on our hands there, Chris.
I'm not a big fighty person, if I'm honest. I'm comfortable with that. I think Callsheet is a good app. I love looking up facts, and I'm trying to get my kids into it a little bit when they're starting to understand that actors appear in multiple films and you can see other works and directors. So I do like it as an app. Maybe I need to have a second run at it.
I think it's worth taking a look at. And if I'm back on Android at any point this year, I'm going to be buying it there as well.
You're not going to be buying Callsheet there?
I'm not going to buy a Callsheet, but Carrot Weather is definitely.
Yeah, Carrot Weather, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. tvOS App of the Year.
This is a tricky one, I think.
This is a very tricky one.
A lot of mine are just the usual streaming apps. It's what's in my top bar. So the list you've come up with, I think, is very good.
I tried to do something different because the usual suspects will be BBC, Netflix, Disney Plus, Apple, Paramount Plus, whatever else.
Yeah, and it's a bit dull. So no, I like what you've done. So let's start with Tailscale then.
So Tailscale is a VPN app. You, I think, have threatened to try it at some point on your iPads and things like that.
I 100% want to give this a go. I haven't got around to it.
It's a terrific app, Tailscale, and you can install it on the Apple TV, and I think it was a major revolution for the Apple TV that you could have VPN apps on there. So, for example, if you travel with an Apple TV, you can flick this on and you can be as if you're in your home network. So let's say you went to America and you want to watch iPlayer on the Apple TV that you've brought with you in your room. Now you can do that. Or you could flip it on and you could watch American Netflix if you had somebody with a Tailscale endpoint somewhere else. So the fact that you can have VPNs on the Apple TV, well done, Apple. The fact that Tailscale have built such a comprehensive client for it straight away, I think is laudable for a company that they don't charge for this. They charge for the pro version of Tailscale, but you can have up to 10 users, not devices, users on your free Tailscale account. So I think it's a terrific service that lots and lots of people are beginning to get into, where you can do all sorts of clever things, where you can, use the Apple TV as an exit node, so you potentially don't need to run a service, the Tailscale service, on another computer continuously running on your house. So I think this is just a great thing that they've put together for the tvOS. Who'd have thought tvOS would be so flexible, frankly? So for me, it's definitely a contender for tvOS App of the Year.
Yeah, I'm going to have to play this because I've got a spare Apple TV and I've never thought about taking one when I travel now, but I'm starting to come around to the idea of actually that'd be pretty cool. So I think this looks interesting. I like the idea of it as an exit node as you point, there's a route back into your network. So I think I'm going to give some of this a go.
Yep, it's a good app. Talking about the traditional streaming apps, if you don't want to run them, then you can run a thing called Jellyfin. So this is the second choice this year. Jellyfin is, back in the day, there was a service called XBMC, the Xbox Media Center, so you could stream media around your house. So if you had TV you'd recorded or anything lying around that you want to just have access to in a single point, you could use XBMC. That went on to become Kodi. Another split of that is Jellyfin. Jellyfin is a completely open source server that you can point your media collection at and then stream it. Well, I mean, I could have put this in iOS App of the Year and tvOS and iPadOS and Mac App of the Year, and it runs in a web browser and it runs on everything. But tvOS being the limited selection that we have, I think it's quite a good one on there. There's a Swift version of the client called SwiftFin that you would install on your tvOS. It's free, and then you can watch your media collection with subtitles, with beautifully rendered album art, effectively. We'll tell you about the actors in the same way that Netflix and things do. You can have translations into other languages. It manages your media for you, and it's all automated. It's a great service. It's entirely free, and it works really well on the Apple TV because in its default state, it depends on client side to decode the media format. A lot of these other servers that run elsewhere, things depend on the server to do it. So you need graphics cards to do transcoding, to go from 4K on your content to 1080p on your device or less. This actually relies on the client. The Apple TV is quite a beefy thing, so this actually makes use of your Apple TV, which it doesn't always do. So it's just a well-written thing that works.
It sounds good, and again, I think with my retweak of my home setup and my new Mac coming, this is one I need to consider. I think this with Tailscale could be quite interesting.
It could be a good matchup. It lets you do both things for sure.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
Third app, very niche for me. I'm not anticipating this is going to win, but the MotoGP app, which is a streaming app, so you can watch motorcycle racing over the course of the season. They redesigned it, they put their new branding in, they made it an awful lot more reliable this year, and that's really what you want to see from one of these things. The early iterations of the MotoGP app were very low quality. You got lots of lag when the races got more intense, and lots of people were logging on to watch what was going on. And as they added technology like cameras and all the bikes and rearward facing things and shoulder cams and all the sort of innovations that they try to bring to racing to make it more interesting to a non-interested crowd potentially, you could see it was beginning to struggle. They've obviously thrown a lot of servers at it this year. I think the redesign has worked really well. I like the fact that there's a spoiler-free version of the races if the races is ongoing, and you can catch up and do all that kind of stuff. So nothing revolutionary, but just done very well. And I like the calendaring built into it as well, so you can see when the next race is and you can get a reminder of when it's going to start.
Okay. No, it does sound good, and it sounds very similar to where F1's going, so that's quite cool. And it's great having all the extra cameras. I do like that.
Yeah, it's a nice feature. And last but not least, YouTube. Just because now they've taken out their stupid screensaver timeout, it's just a very solid, well-done app that you can very quickly search, find the videos you're looking for, and get on and watch it. And for all we struggle with YouTube, we put our podcast up there. There's lots of interesting media on there if you can tolerate watching it. It's been the odd recommendation from me about YouTube things about classic books, Cinema Wins, as we've just talked about. I think it's an interesting service run by a variable company, but actually their Apple TV implementation is very solid.
Yeah, I as much as I'm not a huge YouTube person, my kids would 100% agree with you that the app is really good and they love it on the Apple TV. It's fantastic.
And they gave us 4K streaming before the BBC.
Yeah, that's fair. They've done a good job, to be fair to them.
They have. So, any feelings about winners in this category?
I quite like the idea of Tailscale.
Yep.
I don't really want to give it to YouTube.
No.
And I like the idea of Jellyfin. They're probably the two that stand out. They're the ones that have most whet my appetite. What do you think?
I'm with you. I think they're of the four. MotoGP is too niche. YouTube don't need any awards. They have all of the monies. I think Tailscale for bringing a VPN platform like this to the platform should win, and Jellyfin for supporting open source in-home media streaming should get the runner-up.
Tailscale kind of blows my mind that they've brought the VPN, both ends of it, to the platform, the exit node and the entry, and it just seems crazy to me. So, yep, fair enough. Let's go with that.
Beautiful. I'm going to shut up and let you talk about the next category, which is iPadOS App of the Year.
iPadOS App of the Year. I'm going to need a little bit of help when we get towards the end. So I've got 4 here. So I've put Reader app in. Again, we've talked about it on the iPhone, and I love it on the iPhone, as we've already discussed. But I think it's just a great app. I think they've done a great job, especially syncing the timelines, as we've already discussed. So I won't go into more on that one. Then I've put Outlook in, which is controversial because you said, I can't believe you're putting Microsoft Outlook in here. But I think, to be fair to them, they've done a good job this year. They've adopted the new tab bar at the top that came with iOS 18. It runs really well. It's a solid app. And when I looked around to exit Mail, Apple Mail is for my personal email. I use Outlook for my work email. I couldn't find a good competitor. And in the end, I thought, actually, all I want is Outlook, but for personal mail. But I don't want to have my personal mail and my work email in the same app. I like to keep them in separate apps. I just think it's a really good app, and it's great to see Microsoft iterating, bringing new functionality, new looks, the icons updated. You know, they're taking advantage of iOS 18 already. So that's why I give it a good thumbs up. I've then added in GoodNotes 6. I've used GoodNotes for quite a few years. It's a really good app, and GoodNotes 6 it's just even better. They just keep adding more functionality. It's great if you want to do notebooks and diaries, but having it on your iPad in a concept of a notebook. So you open the notebook, you have a front cover, you have line pages, or you can have dots or squares or whatever it may be, but it feels more like a book, if that makes sense. And sometimes it's nice to take notes using the concept of a notebook, but just done really well. And again, they keep iterating on it, they keep updating it. There's a whole store in there where you can buy different templates. Just a really well done app with a bit of a community behind it. And then we've got Notion, which you put forward as a candidate. So I'm curious to see what your view on Notion is.
Before I talk about Notion, I'm just going to come back and talk about Outlook. While I agree with you that Microsoft seem to be being quite good citizens, I don't think Outlook, the email client, has actually improved over the years. I think in many ways it's got worse, and I'm bringing my Mac feelings to this and my Windows feelings to this. The fact that you can't do things like import PSTs anymore, the fact that you can't do distribution lists anymore, and I feel like the iPad and the iPhone and the Android apps are kind of responsible for us beginning to lose functionality on the desktop. And I'm not going to call it the idiotification of desktop apps, but I kind of feel it's to blame that people are now expect a more cut down thing because they're used to using it in its more restricted mode. And I kind of want to hold Microsoft's fingers to the fire on that a little bit. While it is a good app and it's a good citizen, and actually is equally improved on Android when I was using it over the summer, and I think the iPad implementation is very, very good. That it behaves well in the ecosystem. It gives good notifications. It's not too intrusive. Other than Microsoft's odd authentication approach to things, where you've got to go back to your phone to agree that you put in the code every so often. I think it's a fine app. As an app, I don't think it's a great email client particularly. I think the Gmail, for example, are doing more interesting things with their email. I think it's an expectation for corporate users for the way that it works. But I don't like the overall idiotification of the platform.
Okay, so I can understand that, because if you use the latest Windows client, it's all web views and what have you. And obviously Microsoft are trying to harmonise their views. I actually really like how simple the iPad app is. There's not much I need to do on an email. I need to see my email. I need to reply to it. I need to search. The search got way better. I need to see my calendar. I just think it's a great app, and I spend my life in email on my iPad. I just generally quite like it. I'm sorry, I'm unapologetic about it, but I don't disagree with you. I think they have tried to simplify the legacy platforms, Mac, Windows, because they're trying to get all the clients to have the same functionality.
We've talked about Reader, so I'll gloss over that. I think it's a good app and it worked quite well. GoodNotes 6 is interesting. It's good to see somebody pushing the boats with a note-taking app that specifically makes use of the Apple Pencil, because I think they actually do a better job than Apple. Apple have added some functionality this year in terms of Apple Intelligence, handwriting and math recognition and things like that. But things like GoodNotes have been flying that flag for a lot longer than Apple have. So I'm very much behind you on GoodNotes and its functionality on the iPad as a first citizen good app on the iPad.
Yep, it is fantastic, and I like the metaphor that you can have notebooks and folders, and it just helps my brain. I've got a notebook, and if I meet with the same person every week, I have a notebook with their name on it, and I put all my notes of when I met with them in there, and I think it's really good.
And unbeknownst to you, my daughter also makes use of GoodNotes for her studies and links everything together and does her anatomical diagrams and does her research and links all of her things together in that. So it's got beyond a corporate audience, that actually make use of the platform. So I think that's a very good thing.
No, that is good, and she's probably using it a very different way to me.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas she'd only be using Outlook in its dumbed-down version. For me, Fair. Outlook is just a web view on the iPad, but actually it's a web view I can tolerate. I don't think it's a particularly great app, but I think the service is so strong in terms of its ability to not just take notes, but to link between them, to write Markdown, to create databases, to notify people things that are going, to give you live document editing, even on an iPad, which we know how hard that can be based on the troubles we've had getting live documents up and running. The free service is good. The paid-for service is excellent, and I don't feel I'm being ripped off corporately because we use this corporately. So when one of my team is working on a marketing plan in Notion at work, I can fire up my iPad and I can see what's going on straight away. With live commenting, I can turn bullet points into tables. We can bring some AI tools to it if we want as well. I think it's just an excellent service, and I think you can see from the people that make use of it, Affirm, Remote, Password, 1Password, and Figma, that it's actually beginning to get a bit of a foothold. So it's not as flexible a note-taking app in terms of it's not expecting a pencil, it's not making use of the platform, but they've brought a very complete desktop implementation, unlike Outlook, to the iPad, and I think it's got to be lauded for that.
Yeah, I do think it does look a good app. I've never found the need for Notion, but it does look really good, and I can see why you use it.
Yeah. So there we go. There are our 4 apps. Filling's a bit of a winner.
It's a tricky one. My preference right now is Reader, because we had it in the phone section, in the iOS section. I really like Reader, and I like they've done something different with the interface. I think it's really good.
I won't argue with you. I think Reader is a good winner for this, and for me, I think GoodNotes should be a runner-up.
I completely agree. I was about to say GoodNotes, so you read my mind.
There we go. You see, we can be harmonious on this. I suspect our next category may be less harmonious, so should we dive into TV Show of the Year?
Yeah, let's do it.
So our 4 nominations are Slow Horses, Shogun, Dune Prophecy, and Mr. Bates versus the Post Office. I think it's fair to say 4 terrific shows.
I will take a word. I've not seen Shogun. I've seen a little bit of Dune Prophecy, and I've seen the other 2.
And I will say, as I'm doing the video for this, that Apple web links are very, very annoying in that they always want to open up in the app, not in the browser.
Yeah, they do seem to want to force you into the app, don't they? They don't like you having web content.
There we go. So Slow Horses first. I think it's really difficult to argue against Slow Horses. It's a terrific show all around.
I love it. Look, I'm just looking at my shelf. I've read 6 out of the 8 books, and 2 of those in the last couple of weeks. They're fantastic books, the story, the characters, and they've been translated really well into TV. So this is one of my favourite shows, and I'm already looking forward to the next one, and I want to go back and rewatch the first season because I just think it's so well done. The cast, the direction, all of it, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a great show, great cast. Nothing else to add to it. It has hit a quality level and it has stayed there.
Yeah, and to be fair, very consistent. Season on season, the delivery's been really good.
So my next question, as we go to talk about Shogun, is why haven't you watched Shogun?
I don't know. I haven't got a good answer for it. I've got Disney Plus, so that's not the reason. I haven't got time. I don't know. I just struggle to watch a new show. I think I need to prioritize a little bit.
So I think Shogun is 10 hours of your life, incredibly well spent, frankly. It's 10 one-hour episodes. I wouldn't go as far as say it's transformative, but it was a bit of a revelation to me as to how good it was. I was expecting it to be good. I'd heard good things about it. But it's so good. And one of the things that really stood out to me was a Japanese artist talking about how this had such an impact in Japan, about the fact that this isn't the way Japanese people, and particularly this period of Japanese history, are typically portrayed. that they have the same sort of westernized influence of what we think that period is like compared to this, which I believe is more contemporaneous in terms of the way that they speak. They speak in a slightly more modern tongue than would have been done at that time, but actually in the way that the culture is portrayed, the shoguns are portrayed, the various warlords and things are the acting is off the charts. The sets are amazing. It's just a truly remarkable TV show, and I think as a one-off, possibly they'll get a second season, media event, it's truly remarkable. It really is one of the best things I've watched in a number of years.
Yeah, you are making a compelling case for it. I was just adding it to my list of things I need to get on and watch. You are making a very compelling case for it. It does look like it's got high production values. Oh, okay. No, it sounds good. And this is your second pitch at me for watching it.
Yeah, so at some point you're going to have to. And it has been well nominated in lots of categories. So I think Shogun is well worth a watch. Third, Dune Prophecy. So this is a new show this year coming off the back of the Dune movies that have done so well with Denis Villeneuve. There's quite a rich sort of literature seam they can mine from the 5 books that Frank Herbert wrote and then the 7 or 8 that his son, I think James Herbert, wrote. They're going back 10,000 years. They're showing a bit of prehistory before they get to the events of the film. This is solid, I think. You know, it didn't have the greatest ratings on IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes, but it's building over time. We're up to 6 episodes at this point. The cast is excellent. The sets are incredible. And I know you didn't watch Game of Thrones either. You've really got to sort out some of your media watching habits, Chris. But this really feels like a Game of Thrones level show in the sense that the world building that's going on for all the various houses and the Emperor and the intrigue and the sisterhood, it's very well done. And if you're at all interested in that world of how you get to, I can talk about the first film, how do you get to Paul Atreides? Where's the starting point that you end up with a super being? This is telling the story of that. Why are the Harkonnens and the Atreides the big houses that are fighting over this? Who is the Emperor? These questions, they're not answered, certainly in the 5 episodes I've watched of it so far, but you can feel that they're getting there. And I think they do a great job. It's very true to the books, and the acting is, again, phenomenal.
Yeah, it does look good, and I love this universe, the Dune universe. So, because the games, they were the first computer games I got into when I started playing computer games. So I think that's why I like this area. And I'm not sure why I haven't picked this one up yet.
Yeah, I think it's one that's worth a look. Available on Now TV in the UK or HBO Max in the States.
So the fourth choice is Mr. Bates versus the Post Office.
Mr. Bates versus the Post Office. Probably only available in the UK. I can't see it being available in America. It's a very local tale, certainly local in terms of the UK. It's only 4 episodes. It's on ITV, and it tells the story of the sub-postmaster that actually fought the Fujitsu, which we've featured in the news several times on this podcast, system that was actually causing financial and emotional and sometimes more than that harm to sub-postmasters across the UK and the man that fought against them.
Yes, your sub-postmasters being the people that run post offices here, where you send your post and other banking activities. And the computer system basically claimed that a lot of these postmasters were cheating the systems and stealing money. They therefore got convicted or had sentence against them. And this is about them fighting back and overturning. And it's great. It is great film. It's very sad that obviously this has happened. And it's just unbelievable, and it's still going on now in the courts here in the UK, which is unreal. It is very well done, though, I thought, and it's got a great cast.
It has a terrific cast. Toby Jones specifically is phenomenal in it. It's only 4 episodes. They tell the story very well, and as you say, the court case is still ongoing at this point. You know, it's not finished at this point. But I think he has just received a knighthood.
Not the actor, but Alan Bates. Yes, he has. That's correct.
Certainly some sort of commendation from the royal family anyway.
And I quite like those 4 episodes. I think that's a great, nice, succinct story told really well.
Yeah, I would agree. So there are 4 categories. This is going to be a bit of a struggle, this one, I think.
My preferred is Slow Horses, personally, just because I think it is fantastic. But we've probably picked that before, so I worry it's a bit of the same old.
Yeah, I mean, this is my concern, is I think Slow Horses, the problem with Slow Horses is it always gets passed over because everybody else always thinks it's going to be another year. Last year we picked The Bear in this category.
Season 2 of The Bear was fantastic. Season 3 hasn't captured me quite the same way, but season 2 was excellent.
See, I in any other year, I'd have said this is Slow Horse's year because I think it's been terrific. But Shogun was such a good show that really swept me along. Whereas Slow Horses was excellent, this was phenomenal. So for me, my inclination would be that Shogun should be the winner and Slow Horses should be the runner-up.
I'm all right with that.
You're all right with that?
I'm all right with that, yeah. Because you've actually whet my appetite to watch Shogun. So I loaded up my spreadsheet where I logged what things I want to read or watch, and Shogun's gone to the top of the list.
Yeah, it's really good. I think that's fair. And Slow Horses will win another year just because it will. We're getting a couple more seasons of it. We know that, so I'm comfortable that it's going to be, And for 2 years in a row, we've picked a Disney Plus show.
There's some good content on Disney Plus.
They have some good show. And an absolutely honourable mention to Mr. Bates versus the Post Office. It was a really solid piece of television.
Yeah, it's quite hard to watch that we as a country have cocked up something so badly. But yeah, agreed with you. It was very well done.
It was very well done. Movie of the year. And this, again, we've got 5 movies potentially to go through. The first of which is Deadpool and Wolverine. I don't think we need to say an awful lot about Deadpool and Wolverine, frankly. We've talked about it last week or the week before. Big Hollywood blockbuster, well received by the audience, according to Rotten Tomatoes, less so by critics. Hugh Jackman and... oh gosh, my mind's just gone blank. Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds. Very good comic service. I don't think you liked it very much, though, did you?
Well, I think that's the only thing to say about it, in that we are probably in different places here, in that you loved it. I did not love it. I thought it was very funny. I just didn't enjoy any of the story, really. And I watched it more for the humour, less so for the story, because I just didn't enjoy the story. And it's probably not a film I would go back and rewatch.
I think that's fine. I thought it was a good film, well done. It ticked a lot of boxes for me as a fan, and it was funny. Say no more. It made a lot of money for Disney, so well done, Disney. Well done.
Made all the money, didn't it? But no, I did think the script was very good.
Yeah, well done and well acted. Next nomination: Inside Out 2, kids film sequel to Inside Out. Actually, we got a couple of sequels on this list. Now, this is well rated, 91% by the critics, 95% by the audience. I thought it was okay.
I really enjoyed it. I loved watching it with my kids. It was just a nice film to watch, and we've actually gone back and watched it again since.
I agree. It's a nice film. I think it's not as good as the first one, though.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the first one... I don't know. I think they continue. I think they're both very good. I think the first one was great at setting up their world. I think the second one got me straight back in that world really well and brought everybody up to speed. And maybe I'm a bit rose-tinted because I just had a nice time with my kids enjoying it.
And that's perfectly valid, I think. Don't get me wrong. I thought it was a well-done film. I thought it was a good continuation of what came before. For me, it was just lacking a certain something compared to the first one. And I don't know what that was. If you asked me to put my finger on it, I think I'd struggle slightly. Good animation, good story, well acted. I like the fact they moved on to the teenage years. They actually moved the plot along a little bit. It just I don't know, maybe it was Bing Bong it was missing. I don't know, but it wasn't Inside Out.
Yeah, you were wistfully thinking of Bing Bong. But no, they did move it on, I think, really well. And I think they dealt with the teenager. I don't know, I just think they did a really good job of it. Very good old Pixar, I think, as well. I thought this is Pixar back to being strong, telling a good story.
If your last film was Lightyear, I'm not surprised this was a stronger one.
I love Lightyear.
You are in the minority.
I'm the only one that love Lightyear.
Moving along, Dune Part 2, very well received, 92% by critics, 95% by the audience, and very well received by me. I think Denis Villeneuve is an amazing director. I think he has a cracking cast that he brought together there. There's a scene, and I don't think you've watched Dune Part 2 yet.
No, I've seen bits of it, but I haven't seen it all.
Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen and Paul Atreides face off at one point in a room, and it's just the fight sequence there is one of the most beautifully filmed things I've ever seen, with cast at the top of their game. And you look at all the supporting actors, people like Josh Brolin, Christopher Walken, just standing around them, and you just think, wow, what an achievement. He's famously said, Denis Villeneuve, that he prefers to put it on the screen rather than to listen to the dialogue. The dialogue in this is excellent as well. It's just a phenomenal achievement to have such a solid Dune Part 1 and then follow it up with Dune Part 2. It's a cracking movie.
And that can be a tough ask, can't it, to get to bang on the bounce. So fair play.
Yep. Third option, and that's the wrong thing, that's our list, is Civil War. Civil War is a standalone movie by A24 is the name of the studio that put it together. It's by Alex Garland. Alex Garland is famous for lots of things, as discussed in this podcast: The Beach, Dread, 28 Days Later, all manner of things. The TV show Deus. This wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but I think it's ever more relevant based on the state of American politics at the moment. Should there be a second Civil War in America, what would that look like? It's kind of a dispassionate look at it for me. The characterization was missing something, with the exception of a scene involving Jesse Plemons. But I think it's a worthy, thoughtful film that's worth a look. You see what it's trying to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind to see this, actually. This is one that if I can catch it on a streaming service, I probably will. I think there's enough in it, and it's not too long a time commit.
Yeah, I think it's worth a look. And then you can tell us about...
Oh, Paddington in Peru, what a film. So again, saw this with my family. We love a bit of Paddington. Who doesn't like Paddington 2? Good family film. I went into Paddington in Peru thinking this isn't going to be as good. I told the kids it's probably not going to be as good. The reviews weren't as good. But actually we all really enjoyed it. We had a great time. And I'd happily watch it again. Looking forward to it coming out, and I will pick it up because I just think it was a really good film, and I think they've closed out the trilogy pretty well. I think the second one was the strongest, then the first one. But no, just really enjoyable, and I would recommend.
Fair enough. I haven't seen it, so I can't comment, but the last two Paddington films have been excellent.
And it was nice in a way. They left London obviously and went to Peru, and it was nice for it because they could have just been in London and done all that again, but it was nice for a very different change of scenery.
Really weird there's no popcornometer on this one on Rotten Tomatoes. We've only got the critics rating at 92%.
Yeah, I don't understand that.
So here we go. We've got 5 films to pick from. You haven't seen Civil War or Dune 2, and I haven't seen Paddington in Peru, but my inclination would be Dune Part 2 should win this.
Yeah, look, for me it can't be Deadpool. I just... don't want to talk about it. I'm comfortable with Dune Part 2. I think they're fantastic. My preference would be to give Inside Out 2 a runner-up if you were there, or Paddington. That would be my preference.
Because I've seen Inside Out 2, and like I say, it wasn't a bad film. I'm happy that Inside Out 2 becomes our runner-up.
Okay, done.
Game of the Year. We have Balatro, Call of Duty Black Ops, Tactical Breach Wizards, and Satisfactory. And I don't think we need to go into these in the detail that we did with some of the other categories, because you won't have played at least 3 of them.
Correct.
So I think let's make this very simple. I have played all of them. I bought Satisfactory during the Steam sale. I've had a go at the opening couple of levels of that, so I've got a feel for how that goes as well. In our show notes, for those that want to read it, I have put in the Metacritic reviews for them as well, which give you an idea of how well they've been received by others. All of them are highly rated, but I think the most highly rated is Balatro. Balatro is also available on the Apple platforms. It's a pick up and put down game, or you can just spend hours playing it. My inclination would be, without going into all the detail, as I've said, would be to give Balatro Game of the Year.
Wow, okay. Interesting.
Were you not expecting that?
No, I wasn't straight off the bat because obviously you've played Call of Duty a huge amount. Tactical Breach Wizards we've discussed. And Satisfactory I have played and quite enjoyed it. It was a bit slower going than I thought to begin with, but I think I need to sink a bit more time into it. But look, Balatro is winning lots of awards. I'm very comfortable with that. It does seem to be the most well received, and you are our resident gamer.
Yeah, I play Call of Duty Black Ops. I don't know that I enjoy Call of Duty Black Ops, and that's a very important distinction. And I enjoy playing Balatro, and I get upset when I lose, whereas in Call of Duty Black Ops, it's just another thing. It's a grind. Blobs. Okay. Whereas Balatro is something I feel I've achieved something. Tactical Breach Wizards is a lovely story, well told, and it's got a lot to say about the state of our society these days, and has a very British sense of humour that I very much enjoy. And Satisfactory is a software toy. I think that if you're the kind of person who wants to just enjoy machines and order and bringing things together with a bit of exploration and construction, I think it does a good job of that.
Yeah, it was. I've fired it up. I've played it. It looks beautiful. It's what seems quite well thought out, upgrading and getting resources, and I'm curious to see where it goes.
So we've already decided winner. It's down to, is it Tactical Breach Wizards or is it Satisfactory that's our runner-up?
I'm guided by you, I think, because I've only played a small amount of Satisfactory. So,
well, given that we've both played Satisfactory and we both see it, I think let's give Satisfactory the runner-up.
I think that's fair. It certainly did enough to whet our appetite to purchase it.
Absolutely. Moving on, and coming to the end of our little awards, biggest screw-up of the year. We have Apple and the DMA versus and the EU. We have the Google antitrust case ongoing with the Department of Justice, where they're going to be split up in some way. And we have CrowdStrike. So the first two are, as discussed at the top of the show for Apple, absolutely of their own making. They did not need to be in this situation. They could have moved the goalposts. They could have allowed a checkbox to allow people in. They could have allowed developers to notarize apps and get on and do things. That's Apple. Google absolutely did the same sort of thing. They went ahead. They paid money to put their app in places where it shouldn't have been, and they created a monopoly. And then CrowdStrike was such an own goal because they should have done more testing, but actually had the most sort of global impact at the moment of these three things. You got any feelings about these three?
Yeah, I think for me the biggest screw up is CrowdStrike, surely, because that downed planes, that was massive cock up. I don't know what your view was. It certainly ruined my day, and it just seems like a massive home goal for something that shouldn't have happened.
I think if you asked the general public what caused the most impact, what IT story caused the most impact, and let's face it, all we've talked about this year is data breaches and things as well, and hospitals being hacked and all sorts of things. But CrowdStrike is what's absolutely living in people's heads. They wouldn't know the details of the anti-Apple work with the EU, and probably most British people wouldn't be aware of the Google antitrust case.
And you know what? Most people didn't know what CrowdStrike was until that day.
Yeah, whereas CrowdStrike was featured on the Great Fad Quiz of the Year with Jimmy Carr the other night. So CrowdStrike is in people's minds.
Yep, definitely CrowdStrike done.
CrowdStrike is our winner, and I got to say, I think Google are always going to face antitrust, and Apple are next on this list. So for me, the runner-up is Apple and the DMA.
Yeah, agreed.
Tell us about most absent.
Most absent. Well, we've got Apple Intelligence and Apple Vision Pro. And I think if Apple Intelligence, there was a lot of promise at WWDC and it's turned to nothing. And I kind of wanted to put this under biggest screw up because I thought Apple's just messed it up. I think they've got some good ideas. I like some of the branding. I like some of what they've spouted is coming. But they just don't seem to be delivering on it, and the cock-ups that they keep coming up with and the incorrect summarizations. And the marketing campaign around the iPhone 16s was messy, where buy your iPhone for Apple Intelligence. Dagger. It comes out later on in a couple of months' time, and it's all a bit beta-y. So I just don't think Apple Intelligence has delivered, and I think Apple should have left it absent for the entire year and brought it out next year in iOS 19. What do you think on Apple Intelligence?
Yeah, I feel the same. I mean, it's the next big thing. They sold the phones, they sold the computers, they were selling everything with Apple Intelligence as being the feature, and then it wasn't there. I mean, it was absolutely absent from the releases. And yes, they promised it was coming, but their whole marketing campaign, and the whole reason they put 16 gig of RAM in their computers and all the things you could do with a phone were based around Apple Intelligence, and it's still not here. We've had a couple of features, but frankly, Siri is still so dumb that it begins and ends there. It's failed out the gate. It's got a fancy new animation, which I like, but it's still the same old dumb Siri.
Yep, and now it's inconsistent, as I've said before. If you use it on your Apple TV or on a device that doesn't support it, it looks different, and I think it's confusing. I think they've taken something that was quite straightforward and made it confusing.
100% agree. And then the Apple Vision Pro, and we were talking about it a lot come the end of last year, 2023. It was announced at WWDC. We're looking forward to it or waiting for its release. It came out in February, March, something like that, in the United States. And after a very little bit of fanfare, not a lot of fanfare, very quickly went quiet, to the extent that it wasn't even featured in this year's WWDC, other than to say there's going to be a beta for it.
I think the problem here is they've done so little investment in it. I think we all expected Apple to bring out lots of content, to bring all their apps to it. They haven't brought any of their apps to it. I don't know. It seems insane. They've not made any more first-party apps, and we really need them to be trailblazing here, and they're not. And I think it's disappointing because I wanted to see more and more. I wanted them to make people want to spend the money on it instead of spent the money on a Mac Mini instead. But they could have made me spend some cash on it, and I would have done if there was a reason.
Yeah, if you listen to any of the developer podcasts about how declining numbers, there's no point in bringing apps to it. And there was a discussion on ETP this week about how the Sony story we talked about last week with them bringing the Sony controllers to the Apple Vision Pro. What's the point? How many Apple Vision Pros have they sold? 500,000. Of those 500,000 people, how many want to play games? 100,000. Of those 100,000, how many want to play games with Sony controllers? 10,000. You know, you're getting down, and then there's no games to play. So is it worth a developer's time to develop a game for 10,000 people who may or may not have the controller? And then you could do all that, and then you could put on the on your app, must have Sony controllers for this app, and Apple could just say no because they're so fickle. It absolutely has been absent this year.
Yeah, it's rubbish, isn't it? I want them to make me want to spend the money on one, and they are struggling to do it, which is unlike Apple. Normally they're very good at convincing me I need to buy something.
So we need to pick a winner, but I'm really struggling. I think they're both really bad.
I'm just thinking, I mean, they could win together. It could be Apple own goals at time. What do you think?
I think that's fair enough. And this is only the second year of this particular awards show, so I think we could maybe go with that. Joint winner, Apple Intelligence and Apple Vision Pro.
And I mean, Apple Intelligence is definitely most absent on the Vision Pro, so it kind of actually works in a meta level as well.
Is this joint winner or is this joint loser?
Well, there is that, isn't it? Joint absentee.
Joint absentee. There we go. I think that's our New Year show, our end of year show done.
I think that's it. And the next show we do will be in 2025, which is a scary thought.
It is a very scary thought. So I think we can call that a show, Chris.
Yeah, we can. So if anybody wants to get in contact, Rod is at G5Maniac at Mastodon.scot. That's on Mastodon. Or you can get him on Blue Sky, and he's at G5Maniac at bsky.social. Or you can contact me on Mastodon. I am at _CGP at Mastodon.social. You can watch on YouTube by going to our website and click on the YouTube link. Or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Happy Hogmanay, Chris.
Happy New Year, Rod.
Talk to you next week.
Cheers, Rod.